Hi there. I'm here to answer a student's question. It's how old is the Bible? So this isn't specific to the Catholic tradition, but rather this is the best knowledge that we know through archaeological and literary and historical research. And so whether you're Catholic or not, you're going to be able to have a conversation about how old the Christian Bible is. There are two parts to the Bible, right? There's the Old Testament, which leads up to Jesus, and then the New Testament, which tells the story of Jesus, and then kind of expounds on what Jesus means for the Christian life. Now, the Old Testament, the estimates vary, but basically, we believe the first part of the Old Testament was written down probably around 1300 years BC or BCE, 1300 BC. So that was about 3,300 years ago. Some people date it earlier, so it could be earlier, like the 1500s, that it was maybe begun to be written down. The other thing about earlier is that it's very clear that most of the first texts, in fact, we would say all of the texts of the Bible, began as oral storytelling. So the stories themselves, the actual words that were put down, were decided over a long process of the community telling the story and retelling the story, telling the message and passing the message on before they were written down. So you could say it would be earlier that the story of the Bible gets begun. Some people date it later. So the latest that I've read in my research is about 1000 BC or BCE. That's really when most people are in agreement that the Bible must have begun to have been written by around 1000 BCE. It's around the time that King David had his reign in the Kingdom of Israel. And as a result, he had more stability. He was able to invest into literary work. And so most secular historians are going to be okay with the Bible beginning around 1000 BCE. Now, in the Catholic Bible, there is a part of the Catholic Bible that was written fairly late, up until about the year 150 BCE. So maybe 1 or 2 or maybe 300 years before Jesus is when the texts that we call the Old Testament were finished. In a Protestant Bible, for example, or in what the Hebrews would see, or what the Jews would recognize as the Tanakh, that was probably finished a little earlier, maybe 400, maybe 500 BC. So that would be before Jesus. So the Old Testament was written between about 1300 to about 200, let's call it 200 years before Jesus. So it was written over a period of about 1,000 years before Jesus. The New Testament, the first texts of the New Testament, we believe were written around the year 4550 AD or CE. That would be 50 years after what was thought to be the birth of Christ. So in other words, at least 20 years after Jesus died, was buried, and his disciples witnessed him resurrected and going up into heaven, at least 20 years after Jesus left the earth was when the first words of the New Testament were begun to be written down. And then the process of writing the New Testament continued until most scholars will identify about 100 AD. So 100 years after Jesus was thought to have been born is when the last books of the Bible that we have, the last books of the New Testament, were written down. Now, there's a lot of room in that range that some people have different opinions. Some people have different opinions for religious reasons, and some people have different opinions because of how they see the archaeological and the literary evidence. I would just add that actually the Bible wasn't made when the last words of the last book were written in 100. Of course, how the Bible was made and that process once it was written down is another question. Thanks for listening.